Let's talk about an interesting use of Suno as a MIDI transcriber. Now, few probably use Suno like this, but if we take our simple chord pattern that we had before, we'll use this as the initial simple test case. That's an audio file that we fed in the last episode. Let's take this and convert it to MIDI. Suno has the capability to take an audio file and output stems for that, and also output MIDI for the stems. Because this is one instrument, if I create a MIDI file, it should be just that instrument being output in this case. To do this, what you'll do, and you may have to have the paid program to do this, we'll go to the three dots here and open up our menu. Select the Get Stems MIDI. Yes, it says you need at least a pro version for this. So I'll click on that. And I'll have the option of, if it's just vocals and instrumental, I can just create stems for that. Or if you have something larger, you can create all your detected stems. This one also gives you the MIDI, so you have to choose this one. And this will cost you 50 credits. So they're going to charge you to do this conversion. I've already done this again, but you can go and extract this. And so we'll extract again. And it takes a while for a short piece like this, not a big deal. Once you have that, you have the option of selecting what you want to output here, audio or MIDI. What you can do then is when you go back in and get your stems again, you'll see the option here to see extracted stems. I'll do that. Here you can see there's different versions that it creates. We'll just use the first version. I want to download all. I can also edit this in Studio. We won't worry about that for now. Let me download them. That'll come up. It'll create a zip file with all your stems and the MIDI file in it. And then you can go and look at that. And in this case, you can see it created a MIDI file. I just happen to have Piano Tech as the application that defaults to MIDI in this case. Okay, once we have that, we can exit Suno and enter a music program, either a DAW or let's just bring this up in a notation program. I've brought up Notion. That's one of the notation programs I use. It hasn't been updated in a long time, but it's very quick for me to enter things in this. We'll also look at Dorico a little later. Here's the initial chord pattern that we created the audio for, read into Suno, and just created MIDI from. We'll go in and import the MIDI that we just created. I've extracted it from the zip file and just put it there to open. And there you can see Suno has put some initial MIDI delay in there. There is an offset by a beat, and everything now has been skewed, and this is going to be very difficult for me to read. In this case, it's not so bad since it's such a simple file, but if I create a transcription like this from some more complex Suno audio, perhaps I want to transcribe the audio that it creates for me when I create. We'll do that in a second. This is going to be a problem. I've run a few things through Suno, and it always seems to put this initial delay, this initial offset in there. Well, let's bring that into a DAW, get rid of it, and see if we can create a transcription here that looks better. I've brought up Cubase, imported my MIDI file that I just created, and you can see when I show the piano roll, that initial delay, that initial beat that's put there. We'll just select everything and move the MIDI so that there's no offset at the beginning. And now I can go in. There we go. Things are starting right at the beginning of the file. I'll go and I'll export that data to another MIDI file. We'll use the defaults. There we go. Get out of this program. Let's bring up the notation program again and see how the data looks. Back into the notation program. Again, here's our original. Let's go import the MIDI that we just fixed up in Cubase. There it is. Looks much better. Now it's starting at the beginning. leaves out a few notes. If we compare this to the original, you can see that it left a few notes out here and there. It pretty much transcribed correctly, but no audio to MIDI translation program I know of is going to give you 100% transcription. This is pretty close. Of course, it's very simple chordal structure now. So let's go in and do the same thing for the file that we created from this. Okay, for grins and giggles, let's go to the jazz trio plus sax cover we created from this. And let's extract the MIDI for that. So we'll get stems like we did before. We'll extract everything. Going to cost me another 50 credits. This one's going to take a little bit of time. I'll go past that for you here. You can see I created 2 versions of this. I'm just going to extract the first one. Okay, there we go. And you can see it loaded some drums. Here are all the stems that it created. Pretty impressive. So let's go in and we'll download all like we did before. We have it set on the MIDI there. There, it created my file. Let's see what's in there. You can see I have all the MIDI. I selected MIDI, so I have all the MIDI stems to recreate what this gave me. And you can see, even though I asked for a jazz trio, it gave me bass, drums, there's an effects MIDI track there, keyboard, percussion, it threw in a synth, some woodwinds. Just because you ask for something in Suno doesn't mean Suno might not give you a little more than you expect. But this is one of the great things you can do. You can extract from the stems what you want and maybe even record over that something of your own and have a mix of Suno and yourself. Perfectly acceptable. A lot of people do that. So for this, I'll just go in and extract the keyboard and say the woodwind part, and I'll take them into Cubase, get rid of that extra delay at the beginning, and import that into my notation program. And I'll do this for both Notion and Dorico, and you can see they actually notate things a little differently. Okay, I've normalized things, taking 3 lines into Cubase. I extracted the piano part, the alto sax part, and the electric bass, or I made it an electric bass in the Notion output. So I'm using the Notion instruments here. They're not as good as if I had used real great samples. This is just an illustration of what MIDI you can get out transcribed into your notation. Here you can see the piano part's not always playing the bass line. It's got some kind of extracted middle part, and the bass line is given to the bass. The sax comes in later. Now I think I normalized each one of these lines okay in the Cubase program to extract out that initial delay, but you may have to tweak that a bit. Notion here is not actually trying to notate your jazz rhythms that are actually being played. It's kind of quantizing things a little bit to give you a strict notation output. We'll see Dorico actually tries to put the actual rhythms that are being played into the file. Well, let's just play a little bit of this to see how the MIDI extraction worked. It has some problems here. It extracted some wrong notes. Some of the rhythms don't really come across as in the original. So the extraction and transcription of a complex jazz piece, not that this is all that complex here, may give Suno some issues. Let's compare the Notion output with the Dorico printed output. Here you can see a few things. Dorico is going to try and notate things exactly. If it thinks it's a triplet being played, it'll try and stick that in. A lot more detail in the output. Of course, looking at this and playing it, I'd much rather look at the Notion output and improvise myself in a jazz style than try and notate things exactly. But something that is very evident here is you can see all of the slight tempo changes that are being output in the MIDI data. Suno is trying to be very flexible in its tempo usage. The humanization, as I said in a previous video, that Suno does is much more complex than what you'll find in a DAW. You may want to import your music into Suno, create the MIDI output of it, and then re-import it in and get a much more human output. It can take a lot of manipulation to do that, but that certainly is one thing that Suno can be used for in terms of a compositional tool. Here's another extraction from Suno of one of its jazz outputs. You can see it's trying to notate all these triplets to try and recreate a jazz flexible output style. Well, who wants to try and read something like this? If you want to use a notation program as a transcription of a piece that Suno is creating the MIDI output for, you'll have to figure out what kind of notation program works best for you, how you want this to really be notated, and you're probably going to have to, in any case, go into the notation program and start fixing things up to make the transcription more to your liking. Let me end with a kind of exciting option that I've been looking at with Suno, and that's taking an instrumental piece that I've written and feeding it into Suno and asking Suno to create a piano solo transcription of it. Now, Suno's not going to give you an exact transcription. It's always going to add a little bit of something it thinks it needs, but you can always create the MIDI file from that and manipulate it, change it however you want. But you may find that what Suno gives you in its solo piano outputs is something that you really like and you want to keep. So let's see what this does. In this case, I wrote this piece for a double wind quartet that was performed a long time ago for oboe, English horn, a bass oboe, and a bassoon. I didn't create a piano version of this first. I just wrote it in the score as a 4-part piece. I often write like that. Let me play you this piece in terms of kind of what it sounds like. It's a sample performance, but we'll take that, feed it into Suno like we did before, make a cover of it, tell it piano solo, and see what Suno comes out with. And I'll take the output of that, translate it to MIDI, normalize it in Cubase the way we've been doing here, and I'll throw that up and play what Suno actually created with the notation. So this is what Suno created in terms of a piano transcription. I'll play that and kind of follow along as best I can with the original score. They don't really map one to one. They don't exactly line up. But after this, I'll play you the piano version that's extracted from MIDI. I'll play that with a Pianotech piano just to show you. The MIDI that's translated is not quite what the original is, but it'll be a good comparison to show you how this all works. I'm really impressed with how Suno handled that. It was done tastefully, it was done musically, and it gave me ideas in some sections for things that I might really want to add myself or modify. This is an amazing tool to be able to take an instrumental piece and create a piano version that is that tasteful and in style of the original input. Fantastic. Unbelievable. So here's the output that I've converted from the MIDI. It has a number of issues in it. It elongates the beginning. There's a lot of differences. I'll play this and I'll have this MIDI play Pianotech piano, a Steinway of some sort that I'll pick. And you'll see how this evolves. And I'll end there. I can't say enough good things about this program from a composing standpoint. It really gives you great ideas. It makes musical choices. Where is this going to be in 5 years? Who knows?